Chris Everett and Ivan Lendl in Top Players Tennis. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
And this is the only tennis game where you can play as Chris Everett, Ivan Lendl, boy and girl. And that's not a reference to the fact that they are, at one point in their lives, they were a boy and a girl. This is actual character creation on the main menu screen that you can choose to be either Chris Everett or girl.
Okay.
See, it sounded to me more like you were doing like Chris Everett and Ivan Lendl, boy and girl. Like that's their title, their subtitle.
So wait, you're saying this is, I guess I didn't play enough of this game to be on this podcast right now. You're saying that if you select boy or girl, then you can go into a character creator and make your tennis player?
Yeah, and choose your stats and everything.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I mean, you don't do anything other than choose your
Yeah, you don't make their appearance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can't add accessories and like give them like an eyebrow ring or something.
No.
No
Okay.
eyebrow rings yet.
All right. Now, I have a question for you, Mike. You did the research. Are these guys like the Federer and Nadal of the early 90s, late 80s?
Yes, absolutely true. Also, you're once again proving that you didn't do any research if you're telling me these guys as in two men. Chris Everett is the woman.
Oh,
yeah. But Ivan,
it's pretty low fidelity 8-bit graphics. I can't.
That's funny. Ivan was the world number one for a record 270 weeks straight through the late 80s, early 90s. So yes, before Federer's time, but and Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic would all wind up surpassing that amount of weeks at world number one. Actually, I don't know if that's true for Nadal because he always has to compete with Federer and Djokovic. Kind of crazy that Federer and Djokovic could both have amazing world number one streaks when they played around the same time. Anyway, the point being, yes, Ivan was a amazing tennis player back during that time period. I'm not sure he'd be considered, still one of the GOATs in modern tennis or whatever. Obviously he's not playing anymore, but I mean, in the history of tennis, I don't know if you'd consider him up there with even other top tennis players from other
Where's
eras.
McEnroe fit into?
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like McEnroe is probably more regarded than Ivan, even though Ivan had more weeks at number one.
Okay.
Yeah. Although he had a 21-15 record against McEnroe, so maybe I just don't know much Ivan. But John McEnroe liked to talk, so that's why you know more about him.
Yeah, he was an actor and stuff. Or at least did a lot of cameos pretending to be an actor.
There you go.
So tennis.
They're giving you 7 different types of match setups, all just changing between singles, doubles, computer, and player options. Reminds me again of that whole Sesame Street video game where they're trying to make it seem like you got a bunch of different modes, but really it's just how you want to play tennis, right? Technically these are all things that we should be configuring, not treating as separate modes. Other than the different match setups, you have access to the hard, clay, and grass courts, which is great because those are all the types of tennis courts. But more impressively, you also have access to all of the World Cup tennis matches. So you get to go between the U.S. Open, the Australian Open, Wimbledon, the French Open. So, pretty good. And that's where this character creation thing comes into, Sean, because yes, you could just play as Chris or Ivan and go through the different tournaments and try to get the Grand Slam, or you could build your own character with RPG stats in my tennis game. I could never. But you begin with 20 points, put them out across strength, speed, agility, stamina, skill, ball spin, focus, and miracle. We'll get into the whole miracle thing in a minute. But
I'm glad finally a game didn't leave out miracle.
Yeah, I mean, why doesn't Fallout have a miracle stat, Sean?
It's called luck.
there you go. You know what? You're 100% right. And I would even argue that some of the what miracle really translates to here in this game are miracle shots, and that's more like the other part of Fallout, which is like when you get those traits, right?
Why are we talking about Fallout right now?
Because that's what top player tennis is. Top player tennis is Fallout, but instead, everything is clay. Instead of everything is nuclear disaster, everything is just clay.
All right, I buy it.
Anyway, no, the point being that obviously with the character creator, if you're just choosing boy, which feels weird again, just why wouldn't you just pick man instead, right? Like it could have been Chris Everett, Ivan Lendl, man and woman. But they didn't go that route. So anyway, you pick boy.
Well, I think the idea is that you're putting stats into like you're starting out as a boy, but you'll become a man as you like as you put all your stats in. And
well, then they should make it this way. You eventually change to become man. When
it should be boy, and then in parentheses man, and then girl, and then in parentheses woman. Just so that no one gets confused that you don't eventually grow up.
Or maybe you just are a kid because they assume that only kids play video games. So they were like, yeah, like it'd be weird for this 8-year-old boy to buy top players tennis and play as a man.
It would. You're right.
But then you get to because Ivan's a man. Are we supposed to believe these are some chibi versions of Ivan and Chris?
Nah, the different like the sizes of the body parts are all wrong. Like this is not chibi.
The cool thing, of course, about the character creation, other than the fact that you get to kind of choose what you want to invest your points in, is that when you play through the various tournaments, like Joe was saying, going from boy to man, you will gain points from the matches that you've won, and you'll be able to put those points and improve your abilities. You would never, unless you're very, very good at this game, you would never be able to win the Grand Slam without playing a lot of this game and boosting your stats. It's kind of designed in a way where you're not supposed to just win every single tournament the first time around. You're supposed to play through the circuit a few times, get these stats up, and then eventually achieve the dream of being in the World Cup. I keep saying World Cup.
You do.
It's Grand Slam.
That.
It's Grand Slam. But maybe these tennis players want to be soccer players.
Could be. Maybe it should have been instead of boy and girl, it should have been soccer player and hockey player.
I get that reference from Rock and Ball.
How does this game sort of compare to tennis that we played earlier? I played that game so long ago and couldn't be bothered to boot it back up that I kind of forgot a lot of the differences.
Well, I think that the first thing that stands out in my mind is, well, first off, you don't play as boy or girl, and you start out with some stats already on your character. You notice the speed and the weight of your character, or like it's almost like you're playing. I mean, I guess it probably is realistic, but in the video game on a small screen, it almost feels like you're playing on ice.
Yeah, like that's what I was going to describe. It feels like the 8-bit joystick version of mouse acceleration, where the longer you kind of hold a direction, the faster you go, but it ramps up so quickly that it's kind of hard to modulate. And I know that that's because you're going to have to do a lot of like really fast movements from one side of the court to the other, but it ends up becoming almost unmanageable, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I think, at least for speed, I don't know about the other stats, but at least for speed, it's not a matter of like, put more points into speed, and anything that requires speed will become easier. You maybe are more capable, like your character is more capable, but it's still a challenge to manage that speed. Like it's like a different type of challenge. Like, if you're really good at this game, I'm sure you could just be, like, all over the court, like, flying around and stuff. But, yeah, for me as well, like, it was a little bit of a challenge to, like, time it right so I would get to the ball in time without overshooting it, because letting go of the D-pad doesn't just stop on a dime.
Yeah, I think they got this wrong, because even in modern tennis games, tennis, as an actual sport, is a very fast, like the ball comes at those players faster than we can imagine because we're watching it on TV, so we have that like hindsight ability in front of us, whereas they don't have that. and they're constantly sprinting from one end of the net to the other. Trying to do that in a video game, even in modern tennis video games, they don't do that because it doesn't work. If you actually had, it'd be the equivalent of if MLB The Show made it as hard to hit a baseball as it really is to hit from a Major League Baseball player. You don't want to one that experience so closely when you're trying to simulate something. And so, yeah, you kind of have to sacrifice the speed of the actual sport a little bit. But I think there's a reason why in modern tennis games, it's so much easier to get a handle on like where the ball is going to be and getting there in time. And it's more about like, okay, well now how do you respond to that hit, right? Like now based on where you are, based on where the opponent is, based on where the ball is, where are you going to take your next shot? And there's kind of this volley back and forth. It's not that the game was so difficult that I had like a hard time keeping a volley, but it just felt like it was certainly these matches were going fast and not in my direction because of just the one of you said that it's like you're on ice, but yeah, like the slippery nature of the controls.
Yeah. Like I spent a significant portion of December playing Mario Tennis because I was trapped in a blizzard and couldn't leave the house. So I actually kind of have a little bit of PTSD from it, but that sort of, like, I had never played the N64 Mario Tennis before that, and it just sort of became this perfect game to me in terms of how it handles and what kind of control you have over the ball, and it had a good amount of, it had a reasonable window where you could still hit a ball within like the range of the character. And like, so that was more my comparison. And I know that that's unfair to this game because it's 7 years older than it and on so much weaker hardware. But it seemed to, like, aside from just the movement and the on ice and the weird rubber banding feeling that you get with it, where you are when you hit the ball and where the ball needs to be in order to be in reach. Like, it seemed so hard to gauge for me that one example is anytime that I was within like 3 feet of the net, I feel like whatever timing that I had to hit that ball, wherever the ball was vertically, I would just hit the net. And I don't know what that was about, but there's just not enough information in this game to make me realize, why am I just hitting the net over and over? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I felt kind of the same way at times too, where it's like, is it my timing? Is it my, like the length of how long I'm pressing A? Like, it was, I'm sure, I don't know. I would guess that information is there, and somehow there is like an answer to it, and it's not just like, nah, we decided that you're gonna fault on this every time, no matter what. Like at this moment because of like RNG, I'm sure there's something, but it wasn't clear, and maybe it's in the manual and I missed it, but I didn't notice anything.
The controls, there's also a lot of them. I don't think we've ever seen this many complications before between just hitting the ball and then different ways of hitting the ball and then even just the miracle buttons on top of that. So you have A plus the D-pad to do like different types of hits on the ball, such as the top spin, the slice, the side spin. You have A plus B together, which some games have used in the past, but to do a jump, and then A plus B plus the D-pad direction of your choosing to do these miracle shots, which is just, it's insane to me that all of this, including like apparently I never pulled this off, but apparently even like up and to the left, which I don't think is possible on a D-pad, right? Like on an NES D-pad, I don't think you can.
No, you can do 2 inputs.
Okay, I just didn't think that it could read like A plus B plus up plus left, and wow, that's imagine doing that. Imagine pulling off the miracle return. That's what you need. No, the miracle.
And that's
split.
when you're saying that, you mean like sort of leaping to the side with your racket extended and volleying the ball back, right?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the miracle shots, just to make it clear, is like first you have to build up miracle points in order to make any miracle shot, and then once you have your your meter filled, then you can use your miracle shot to do like the miracle split, which will make the tennis into a multi-ball, which is fun, right?
I watch tennis. I know what all this is.
Yeah, of course. Everybody always does the miracle split or the miracle speed, which is that you hit the ball so fast that the opponent can never return it. And that's true. Like no matter how fast, no matter how good the opponent player is, they basically cannot return a miracle speed it. So these are kind of like cheat codes, but not really that different from other versions of Mario Tennis, right? Like it takes this like silliness factor into it, which I think is fine, even in a game that has access to the U.S. Open and Wimbledon and stuff like that, because it is a video game at the end of the day. I just wish it wasn't so hard to do these things. At first, I have to figure out how to play tennis, the way they want me to, and then eventually, I guess I would be able to start pulling off these miracle things, because to use A plus B plus the D-pad direction of your choosing implies that you're already in the spot that you want to be to do that, to return the ball that way. I have a hard enough time getting around the net and making sure that I'm ready for even just a regular shot, let alone a miracle shot.
Yeah, a lot of these required, at least for me, maybe once you get used to it, it's better, but a lot of these seem to require like a lot of very fast like thinking and like dexterity work that's too quick for me to like figure out what to do. Like spinning the ball sounds really easy in the manual. I couldn't get it to work almost ever. I feel like that's similar to what you're talking about, where like in this case, the second after you, like the instant after you press A, you press the direction you want it to spin. I just found that I would just move in that direction and the ball never spun. I don't know if I just am getting something wrong or if you guys noticed anything like that.
Well, you're not going to notice the spin until it makes contact with something. So,
right.
It might be also that the opponent is just not letting the ball hit the ground. But I believe you, because I also was having trouble having any like actual direct feedback with where the ball went. Basically, we're all just saying that we're all really bad at this game.
Yeah, but I'm watching YouTube videos and they're putting spin on the ball and it's very apparent.
Forget that whether like one of us is bad at the game, right? For all three of us to be bad at the game means that at some point, right? I mean, we played a lot of NES games now. Something is wrong here that the other tennis games didn't have going wrong for them. Something about, maybe it's like the way that you barely see your racket when you're not swinging or something. Like something about like just the positioning of the character on this just feels weird. I feel like in most tennis games, and I keep using more recent examples because that's where I play tennis, but in more recent games, the racket is almost, it has like a little bit of a magnet to it, like the racket finds its way to the ball. Whereas in this game, you have to find your way to the ball.
I think that's still happening to an extent, but it's just not as, like, it's hard to interpret. Whereas, like, with Mario Tennis, and I guess other more recent games that Mike knows about, it will be a magnet to the ball, and you can also kind of see how it's doing that. Whereas there just aren't enough frames in the animation for these characters to really understand what's going on and how you're interacting with the tennis ball.
Yeah, there were definitely plenty of times where, I mean, it went both ways for me. Like, sometimes I would be running for the ball and I'd be like, okay, no way, I did not get that. Like, I whiffed like by a mile. But then the game was like, nah, you got it.
Yeah.
But like, it doesn't look like I got it. like I clearly, my racket did not make contact with the ball.
Because there's also that there's a split second of delay between when you input and when the ball starts to like equal and opposite reaction. Like when it starts to actually react to your hit. There's a very split second. I don't know if you guys noticed it. It also makes it kind of hard to realize what you did.
Yeah. Now that you're mentioning it, I'm kind of noticing it too.
And I think it's because, Sean, you were asking for other examples, like the Top Spin games, which they no longer make. I don't even know if they really make tennis games anymore, but
Yeah.
The Top Spin series, which was more like this, right? You would go through the circuit, and obviously they had more than just 4 championships to go
You
through.
couldn't be girl or boy, though?
I don't think you could make your own character. I can't remember now if I was able to make my own character in Top Spin, but you definitely had a lot of characters to choose from. So more than... Well, actually, could you say more than? Because technically, if you want to get real about it, the character creation screen, boy and girl represent an infinite possibility because you get those 20 points to disperse across all these categories.
Wow.
You could make infinite. You are God in this game when it comes to tennis. You get to make the tennis children. Anyway, to get back to my point, even those games that take themselves like more seriously and are like, yeah, with real tennis players and all this, they have like an arcadey feel to them. And I feel like this is even missing that a little bit. It's just, yeah, it's like, in its most basic sense, it is just return the ball one end to the other, and you could bring that back to Pong. This is definitely more Pong than Rockin' Ball was. But, I don't know, this feels a lot less fun than those 2 paddles in Pong hitting that little pixel back and forth. Because at least then it was almost like a more sure thing about what I was. Like here the racket, it just feels weird. It always felt, I never got over that. It felt weird in this game.
For me, I think what it is with Pong, it's easier for me to interpret what I just did and how it affected the game. Here, that's there, but sometimes I am like a little like, wait a minute, so why did I hit it that way? Like what control do I have over like certain elements, and I'm sure it's there, but I think it's just not very apparent.
And so the main mode is that world tour where the game revolves around going to these championships, competing in the brackets, trying to win a Grand Slam. But as I mentioned, along the way, you are, if you choose the character creator, you're improving the stats based on your wins and stuff. So I think it is worth highlighting that these categories of strength, speed, agility, stamina, skill, which is the angle that you can hit the ball, ball spin, which increases the spin, focus, which is energy for skill and ball spin. That I'm not sure of. I wasn't sure if that was like building towards miracle or something. And then lastly, the miracle shots, one for each used. These categories, you can really like choose to buff them out how you like, or you could just balance yourself too. And I think that you do have to give them some credit for not just being like, like, oh, you create your character and then you just, you just say like, oh, I hit the ball hard, or oh, this guy has great speed. Like you could actually develop your character. That feels better than most other options in these kinds of sports games where like the character is more like their gimmick. We saw that in a lot of golf games.
I think this has all of the systems and game mechanics for a good tennis game. I think where it's losing us is just like in the balance of it all. It seems that some stuff is miscalibrated and some knobs need to be tweaked for this to feel. I mean, maybe this is the perfect tennis game for the expert, but for us just sort of walking in after coming from Top Gun and Rockin' Ball before that, we're not calibrated for it.
Sean, that's an interesting point. I never thought about calibrating my video game experiences.
I do it all the time. I'm always calibrating. I'm always trying to think of an end of a joke.
Right. Well, I guess what I was getting at to reel you back in here is if you play Black Bass, right? Then like what do you go for next, right? Like do you just completely switch genres, or do you say like I kind of want to like see what other fishing games have to offer?
Are you talking about like me and my and how I play games for leisure?
Yes, because you were mentioning, that we just came off of Top Gun: The Second Mission, and I can't think of a more different game, even though Top is in the title, than Top Players Tennis.
I guess just to clarify, what I mean by calibrating, it's more so like this game has all the tools to make a coherent tennis game. It's just that we are not. We're used to different baseline rules. Like we're used to Mario Tennis. So that's what I meant there. But to answer your question, I think like if I'm into something, I usually will try and find stuff like it before I get to a point of like, and now for something completely different. Like I remember just last week I got back into the Hades kick, and I'm like, what's something like Hades? And then I unfortunately found out that there is nothing like Hades, so I just played more Hades.
I had a weird moment like that last year where I was playing like Katamari Damacy and then Mosquito Man, and and I was just looking for like, yeah, I want like games like that. Like what is that genre of just like, you could just say weird, right? But like, no,
Weird
I want
shit,
games that
yeah.
I want games that like they shouldn't exist. That's really more what I'm looking for, right? Like these kinds of games where it's like the proposal is so ridiculous and the controls are so unlike any other video game you played, and I just couldn't figure out how to continue to scratch that itch.
Did you end up finding anything?
Yeah, I did actually wind up. It led me to I forget who it is on YouTube. I think Action Button. His reviews are like 6 hours long or whatever.
Oh,
but he
God.
did a review of Tokimeki Memorial, which was just another thing where it was like, this shouldn't exist. It's a dating simulator on the Super Nintendo. Only in Japan, so it was never really like translated or whatever. And I think he had the Sega CD version or another version that was like more polished and stuff. But just watching him play through that game was like satisfying enough for me. But then I was like, oh, what else you got? And he just has like all of these other he had another one that was just like, I'd never heard of this game before, but it's like you're a little kid and it's like you went away for the summer with your family on this island, and it's like it's kind of like a simulator, but you're also just doing stuff on the island. I was like, yeah, what are these games? What do we call these games?
Does that dating sim that's also just like a tax preparer also fall into this bracket?
Which one's that?
I don't know the name of it, but just look up U.S. tax preparation dating sim, and it exists apparently.
Is that the one that's made by the same people that made I'm on observation duty, where you have to watch like security cameras and it becomes a horror game? Like I heard about like a tax preparation game where it like turns into a horror game somehow.
Oh,
but it's all like
about
text on
that.
screen.
I think it's not that.
I'm so down for both those games, though. Sean's game is Tax Heaven 3000. Joe's is, what was that? It's a funny title, Joe.
Well, the one that I've played is I'm on observation.
Yeah,
duty,
I'm on observation.
They made another
duty,
game.
Yeah.
I think actually the other game it might have actually been stock markets, not tax. Same thing though. Sometimes I end up playing the stock market when I'm trying to do my taxes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people
Anyway,
play the stock
tennis,
market
yeah.
and then have a hard time doing their taxes.
That's true.
Hey.
So to get back on topic with tennis, what do you say we stop this volley and instead do the
Go
ace?
for the smash.
Yeah, let's go for the smash and get the ace out of the way, and that is the essential games list. All right, here's the deal. Top players, tennis. If I can't feel like I'm one of the top players while playing top players tennis, then buddy, you got to rename your video game. And if I don't feel like it belongs on the essential games list, then buddy, you're not on the essential games list. Sean?
Well, I really like these like higher concept essential games list votes. Like maybe I should start thinking more about how to formulate a vote so that it like has like a rhyme scheme and stuff, or at least alliteration. And anyway, I didn't play enough of this game. Really, I didn't know about the character creator, but I did know about the base mechanics when you're in an actual tennis match. Because like if it's a sports game and it's not one where like the twist is that you're also managing like an athlete or something, like when it's just about tennis, I think I got a pretty good handle on it. And the fact that I didn't get a good handle on the game kind of tells me that this is going to be just another sports game. And while I do give it credit for being a bit more well designed, at least superficially than prior, like than the other tennis game that we played. It just doesn't have it, and it just doesn't feel all that fun to me. So not essential.
Joe.
Yeah, it's tough for me to sort of like get my head around, is this a good or bad NES tennis game? Like it, I played it and it played like I expected. There were some, there was some learning curve things with the motion and everything. I guess similarly, I'm not like enough into tennis to be like, oh yes, this is a great tennis game. I think that just I have to boil this down to like more my overall opinion that like tennis on the NES is not particularly exciting to me. So like, yeah, there's some cool extra things in this. There's also some things that did wrong, but I think just overall, it's just that uphill battle of like, you got to really wow me as a sports game on the NES, and this didn't. So I'm gonna say no. Also, I want to just a little aside mention the manual. Very interesting description of the menu, where there's like a family tree chart of like which button will take you to which menu with like arrows, like subverting other menu screens, showing like you can go from this menu screen straight to this menu screen, or you can take this other route and go to these other menus. It's just like a weird way of like over explaining their menu, in my opinion. Check it out. Essential manual.
And that's rare. We have never given that out. Although you could argue we gave it to Scoon by default.
That's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, next week we have Twin Cobra. I don't know what episode number that is, but it's the story of a mom who gives birth to two cobras, and they've got to fight through the desert as brothers.
Wait, is this real?
That
Cobra,
sounds wrong.
yeah, Cobra brothers, and they got to fight through the desert because there's a lot of bad cobras out
there. Can we
there.
skip this one, Mike, and just go to the next one?
What if it's not about cobras and instead it's the more, practical thing, and it's just a twin cobra is like a helicopter? Are you happy now?
Oh, another goddamn
Didn't
helicopter.
you see? Now you wish it was going back to my genre of undefinable games. You
that
wish
was
it was
cool.
This is a story about two cobras born at the same time.